other if Donald Trump is reelected? I mean, when you think about a second Trump administration, what do you think the implications would be for the FBI?
Oh, serious, for the Justice Department and the FBI, because Trump is coming for those institutions. He knows their power, and I think he has regrets that he didn't work hard enough to corrupt them last time. So he's coming for them, and that's a danger for all Americans. He's going to put people in positions in those organizations. He didn't have all-stars the last time. He'll have the bottom of the barrel this time. But people who will want to do his will, and that should worry every American.
Now, the Democrats are turning on you, right? I mean, I saw your hearing the other day, and critics have accused you of using the FBI to target political enemies. So set the record straight. You wrote an entire book about it, Government Gangsters. Tell us, how do you respond to the attacks?
Very simply. The FBI's prior leadership left us an institution, that is a police force for America and the world, that allowed a fentanyl overdose to occur and kill an American citizen every 7 minutes. That prior FBI's leadership, Comey, McCabe, left us an FBI that allowed for a woman or child to be raped every 6.5 minutes in this country. That same leadership structure left us an FBI that permitted a man or woman to be killed twice an hour in this country. That's our response to them. When I go to Congress and I go to the Hill, I say, hey, I'm not policing your neighborhood because it's a Republican or Democratic. I'm asking you for help on what your priorities are and what your resources needs are and where you need training, and we're going to send them to you. That's why we're putting 1,500 FBI employees into the field and outside of Washington, D.C. Now, if the Democrats want to play politics with that, they're the elected officials. They get to say what they want.
Hey, good evening. It's Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. This is episode 35 of The Whiners. I'm Ryan. I'm back from my dangerous trip to Moscow, Russia. And tonight, I and Jeff and our guest host, Charles Glasser, whom some of you might remember from last week, well, we'll be speaking with Greg Dillon, who's an FBI whistleblower and an author of the book, The Thin Blue Lie, An Honest Cop versus the FBI. And guess what we're going to talk about? The new and improved FBI under Director Kash Patel and Deputy Dan Bongino. Will it be new and improved, Jeff?
Well, we certainly hope so. Many of us are quite optimistic. And there was an interview last week with Maria Bartiromo. Is that how to pronounce it, Charles?
Bartiromo, right?
Bartiromo. You used to date her, right?
No, we've had dinner and lunch. We've hung out, but no, we've never dated.
She's good. And
she's lovely.
We're going to get into it. But you know what? I think first I need to address the elephant in the room. I notice, is it just me, Charles, or is there a striking physical resemblance between Greg and Ryan?
Well, it's a look. No, I'm just going to say it's a vibe. It's a style.
Greg, it's the macho,
Bald
totally.
and muscular.
Show me your guns. I had a deposition with a lawyer.
Guns are behind me on the wall.
And he had that vibe going, and it was a video deposition, but he was a really arrogant, weird guy from LA. And he shows up on this TV deposition in a muscle shirt, like an Ed Hardy, and he's like showing his guns and his tattoos. It's nuts. So
I'll do that next time, Charles. Don't you worry.
Okay.
Now let me just say, You had some cognac, some fancy things the last time that you were on the show. I just wanted to tell people that diplomatically in Russia, or at the embassy here in Washington, you drink three stariki, three old men, which is sort of like a cognac, but it's also bitters, and it's made from cedar nuts, not pine nuts, and honey, and trees and berries, and actually it's phenomenal. So that's going to be my first thing that I'm going to drink, and then I'm going to go to New Zealand, and I'm going to just have a little Chardonnay. You know, the one drink, it cost me $3,500 because I had to go to Russia to get it. This is only $14. So Jeff, don't worry, you can drink this Oyster Bay Chardonnay. It's perfectly, an everyday kind of thing.
Cleanse the palate with.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm in my usual price range tonight. There you have it, a Bordeaux.
Sorry, I don't understand.
What is that?
That was my Siri as shutting her off.
Siri was not an advertised guest, but sometimes we have people drop in spontaneously.
And
What
Charles,
are you gents drinking?
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, I shot you a picture. This is a dessert wine. There you go. It kind of interesting. First time I've had it, I like dessert wines now and then after a good meal. It's Hungarian, and the type of wine is called Tokaji. And I know very little about it after that. It tastes like a good Muscadet or Muscatel or even a Sauterne. It's in that. It's not as sweet as ice wine, but it's up there. It's
That's
a
at the top
wine.
for me.
All right. And Greg, what are you drinking? Tell the truth. You are under oath.
I have a nice 2025 Berkeley & Johnson pomegranate juice.
Excellent.
I'm definitely out of my league in this group here. I know zero about wines, and but I wanted to.
Okay.
I'm always the nonconformist that's trying to fit in. So I thought I would try to fake it with this.
All right.
That's
well,
all right.
before we get into what's going on with the FBI now, maybe you could just summarize the scandal that plagued your life, Greg, and then if folks want to dig deeper, they can read your book, and your website again is thinblueliebook.com.
Yeah, thank you. Out of college, excuse me, I started as a police officer at a shoreline town in Connecticut. When I was eligible, I applied to the FBI. I spent 5 years with them as a special agent, initially in Alexandria, Virginia, and then the Washington field office. Because I was unable to get back to the New England area within a reasonable time frame, I decided to leave and accept a position with the Chief State's Attorney's Office in Connecticut, which has a investigative division of inspectors, and it's sort of comparable, I guess, to the FBI in the fact that we don't wear uniforms, and we're not a police department, we're criminal investigators. Ironically, I find myself assigned to an FBI fugitive task force. I inadvertently discover that there are agents falsifying federal arrest warrants. And worse than just that, they are using my name and the name of some of my men as the sources of the fictitious information. I report my concerns to the Chief State's Attorney, who was the head law enforcement officer for the state of Connecticut. Unbeknownst to me, he is hoping to get a position with the Department of Justice under Janet Reno to head the criminal division. So he orders me not to discuss it, and then I find myself demoted and transferred, at which time I seek private legal counsel, and we decide to file a federal rights civil lawsuit with the Chief State's Attorney for violation of my First Amendment right to free speech. He had exonerated the FBI agents, even though I had documentary proof that they had falsified affidavits. I'm sorry?
He exonerated, he who? The judge?
The Chief State's Attorney. He went public and said that there was no wrongdoing or malfeasance. I was gagged from responding, and that was the gist of
This is while your case is going on?
I'm sorry?
This is while your case is going on?
No. This is what prompted my federal lawsuit.
Gotcha. Okay. Time frame. Okay.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yeah. No, the fact that I was gagged and prohibited from speaking out about what had taken place while the head of the FBI and the Chief State's Attorney
Year
was
1983.
defending the agents. Yeah. So that's the gist of the book. Yes.
The thing that gets me about that is that other agencies, they talk about different channels. So if you have a disagreement channel, like in the CIA or I think also NSA, then you can make all of those claims that you wanted to make, and they would just put it over there, and it would, channel into basically File 13. But it wasn't a First Amendment problem like you just described it. They said you can say it, but it won't go anywhere. So that's interesting that you say that you had to file a suit for your First Amendment right as an FBI agent, right?
No, I'm sorry. No, I had resigned already and was working for the state,
resigned.
but I was working on a task force with agents. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
So had you ever been in some LEO capacity under, we'll call it the Comey era?
When I made my complaint, it was to Louis Freeh.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Okay.
So now let's think about this because, Greg, when you and Jeff, or I guess Jeff reached out to you, you actually met Greg. Jeff, I believe, is the way that you told me, right? At a book
That's true.
event.
And he just referred to where he worked as a shoreline community in Connecticut.
Right.
May I name it, Greg?
Absolutely.
Branford. We met in Branford, Connecticut when I was there visiting my mom on Mother's Day at a book fair. Yeah.
So it is fitting here. You write the book about the malfeasance and criminal activity inside the FBI, and now we have a team that says this is exactly what they're out to clean out. And this interview, as Jeff pointed out, right off the bat, they say, hey, we are now going to have transparency on probably one of the biggest crises or lies, Crossfire Hurricane, the Trump-Russia collusion thing. And boy, I really feel called out now that I just got back from Russia. I just want to say, because I actually did meet not Donald Trump, but a Russian posing as Donald Trump there. So I just want to say that. But actually, let's get to what they said on that.
This interview is real. I mean, whatever one's bias is, I think we can all agree this interview was packed with
it was
juicy
great.
topics. Yeah.
Yes.
If I may, I mean,
Yeah.
and the clip that you chose, especially with Greg coming on and speaking, and even the partial sharing that he made of his experience, you start with Comey, who says, well, this administration's FBI, they're attacking the agency and they're attacking the foundation. This is the same thing we saw. How dare you accuse Secret Service or NSA or our brave men of the CIA of doing blah, 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 blah. At the same time, what Patel and Bongino are doing, and I say this objectively, they're not attacking the institution of the
That's
FBI.
right.
They're attacking the perversion and of its principles. I'll let Greg speak to that, obviously. But one of the things, and I think we picked it up interestingly enough, Greg. Now, granted, it wasn't the FBI, but you were under a gag order, and the rule was basically keep your beef in the family. The Comey reign litigated or prosecuted 90% of their material out in the public. They would feed stuff to, sympathetic, shall we say.
Well, they made that point, actually, that they themselves are not going to choose who the targets are that are going to be litigated against.
That's even more. Yeah, well, that's even deeper. You're quite right.
Let's take a
And
look
the
at the
other thing is
first
this
clip.
business of going after political allies is not really
yeah.
a sin. Political enemies is not really a sin if your political enemies are actually acting unlawfully.
Well, I think that's
We have
right.
a wave of transparency coming in a matter of days, according to Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Let's take a look at the first clip.
I take Kash Patel at his word on this.
The criminal
Go ahead.
conduct where we find a righteous case to do so and the law and the facts allow us to. But a lot of it we're precluded from. So we'll take the criticism, and it's rightfully so, that could we have done more in the past? Sure, people before us could have. But what we can do now is continue to put out the documents and the information that these people withheld from the American public. And I'm just telling you right now, as much as we know about Crossfire Hurricane, he and I just found out more last week. And we're continuing to work with Congress to put those documents out. That's how vindictive and vicious the former leadership structure here was. Not only did they bastardize the FISA process and lie to the American public, they withheld and hid documentation and put it in rooms where people weren't supposed to look. And it's a good thing we're here now to clean it up, and you're about to see a wave of transparency.
So now that wave of transparency, already 700 pages, Greg, I think, were released. So it's not like nothing has come out. What happens next here?
Well,
First of all, you cut it off. They said in a week, within a week or two.
Within a week or two, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they're
I'm not
obligated
sure
to-
what is going to come forth, but really, Ryan, if it's not a matter of national security, there's no real justification to withhold this information from the public's view.
Well, I've litigated a lot of these cases for access, obviously. There are certain other than national security interests that may rise to the quality of redaction.
Well,
That's
I mean,
all.
confidential informants, victims, that goes without saying.
Bank accounts, home addresses, personal information that doesn't move the story forward, and that sort
Would that
of thing.
apply to the Jeffrey Epstein situation? Because that's the one thing where a lot of people who are, inclined to be very fond towards both Kash Patel and Dan Bongino were very disappointed. I was watching Jimmy Dore the other night, and he and his co-hosts were slamming these two, calling them all kinds of names because they've been promising to spill the beans, and then they didn't. They just flat out said it was a suicide. So my question is, would that be an example of something where they have to stay quiet in some sort of legitimate way, or what?
Greg first, what do you think?
Well, I mean, that's the art of redaction, right? You can release documents and redact the information that's going to harm, an individual, but you should still be able to share the bulk of that information so that the public has an idea of what took place. They don't need to know the specifics of someone's date of birth or address or that type of a thing, but the bulk of the investigation should be somewhat transparent, I would think.
Well, I'm not aware of it, and I could just be behind the curve here. Do have Patel or Bongino or Bondi, for that matter, has anybody at that level said we're going to release our Warren report, our review of the Epstein? When they say he killed himself, are they planning the issue?
Well, no, I think they've been saying it for weeks, if not months, words to that effect. So here let me play what they said in the interview. It was so terse, so matter of fact, so lacking in detail. Here it is.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
See, he said he's seen the file. Then, why not tell us what was in the file?
That's where I think we all, and you're watching at home in the audience, should press the government and indeed press investigative reporters. They're out there. There are reporters who really are. You're asking a great question. Will there be an official report? No, you say he killed himself and you say it with great certainty. Fine, Mr. Bongino. That's, fine. Now, bring the receipts. Give me,
Actually, I
And
saw
by the
somebody.
way, I'm actually one of these people who has been sort of open to it actually being a suicide, because I can see that even though the circumstances are quite fishy, I can see that that Epstein realized he didn't have a very high likelihood of leading a good life. So I can see where he would be suicidal if he could figure out how to do it. I mean, but having said that, I'm also wanting to get some information here. What do you think, Greg? Did you ever were you ever confronted with any sort of a similar situation where you just had to stay quiet and maybe it was legitimate, maybe not? I mean, because it's been said he was owned, meaning Epstein was owned by Intel, is a famous line that was said by a prosecutor.
Right, and I'm as curious as the next person as to what really his background was. I mean, there's talk of Mossad, there's talk of CIA, yet no one seems to ever produce anything that directly links him to that. And I think that's maybe what Bongino was sort of hinting around to, is with no evidence to support a homicide, then the only thing left is a suicide. If no one entered his cell and he was unmonitored and alone, then I guess, the only thing left would be suicide. And I agree with you, Jeff. I think he had a high motivation to kill himself because his prospects of ever getting out were slim. And he is someone who enjoyed the high life. And now he's living in an environment that is just the direct opposite of that.
Say it again, Charles.
I don't know. I mean, look, if Clinton pardoned Mark Rich, I think Biden would have pardoned Jeffrey Epstein, but that's just a guess.
Well, look, take what Jeff just put up on the screen, where the CCTV tapes, were technically erased, and then you have
did the guards fall asleep or something?
They fell asleep. No. Alex Jones said there was a gas that was used to knock them out. Then your friend Jeff Vanda on Facebook, she said Jean-Luc Brunel, who was the friend of his French modeling agent, was hung in his cell. So there's all these things that are kind of being put together where people, I don't even know, Greg, and this is a question you as an investigator, when people start just kind of putting all these things together, then they have like a whole narrative of something. And how do you get somebody to unravel that in their mind to get to the truth?
You never underestimate the level of incompetence in a government agency, and people will take.
I drink to that. I'm drinking to that right now. Here.
Right. That is always something that is a good counterpoint to the conspiracy theorists.
Right, and people will bundle that into this series of suspicious, activity that leads them to believe that there's this mastermind pulling all the strings behind the scene that can get, the cameras to malfunction and the guards to fall asleep and, this and that. When, sadly, more times than not, it's just, the incompetence of government employees.
Now,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, thank you. One of the well, to begin with, you're onto a very major truth. Never attribute to malice what you can account for with stupidity. That
it's poetic. It's poetic.
It's true, and on top of that, you made a point about, well, okay, these guys were incompetent. That's possible. I have found, and I think you'd agree with this in your experience investigating, Zeno's paradigm really, makes some sense. The simplest answer is usually the correct one.
Yeah, is that Occam's razor? Occam's razor.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Yep. The other one is the two trains that never collide.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, the question is, how patient should we be as far as, waiting for more disclosure? Here's another clip where they're kind of, making the point, hey, we just got started. We need some time. And there is some validity to that.
I'm not asking you to trust me. You want this done right or you want it done quickly? Because you can't have it both ways. You want it done quickly, we'll do it. And you know what'll happen? Just what happened last time. Those same Spygate collusion perpetrators sued the government, got money, got all this. You want that? We'll do it. We'll do it quickly and do it wrong.
But are you saying you found things that even you didn't know about? I mean, you were
Yes.
at the core of this.
Yes.
Yes.
I was the lead Russiagate investigator for the House Intelligence Committee. And I've been on both your shows in a prior life talking about it. And I'm telling you and the American public that we have now found material and information and people who wanted to hide it from the world since we got in these seats. And we, as the deputy said, we are trying to do it in a fashion where not only are we informing the American public of what happened, but we can have accountability for it. And that takes a little bit more time.
Can I just had an observation here. I mean, Bongino is just great. I mean, he's not a lawyer, yet he at least comes across. I've only had one interaction with him, very positive, but he's a straight talker, don't you think? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
hey,
He's an exceptional communicator. He
a convenient, fast answer. What do you know? And that's very straightforward. And the Nadering Maybobs, as Sapphire and Agnew referred to them, they won't acknowledge that. I mean, I remember a news cycle where Trump's first 100 days is going to be like a big turning point. We'll all look back and we'll all judge him. And it's like, wait a minute, hold it. That's a little over 3 months. Give me a break here. And I don't care who the president is. You got to give him at least some time. And the same is certainly true for the FBI. Don't you think, Greg?
Well, I mean, I find it very refreshing that Bongino seems to speak from the heart. He doesn't couch everything in political speak. He comes right out and says, what he hopes to do and what he expects to do. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the results are going to be. I'm fascinated to say that they're finding information that they were unaware of, and they've probably been more directly involved with Russiagate than almost anyone. So for them to come out with that, I think is a real bombshell.
Yeah, and they say it's coming soon. Now, there was another flat-out scoop, at least the way they presented it, which is that they're going to close the Hoover Building. And as an FBI agent, a former FBI agent, I'm wondering if you agree it's as significant as they seem to think it is. But let's play the clip first.
Seeing an increase in the number of potential agents wanting to come in and work with you?
Look, the FBI is 38,000 when we're fully manned, which we're not. In the National Capital Region, in the 50-mile radius around Washington, D.C., there were 11,000 FBI employees. That's like a third of the workforce. A third of the crime doesn't happen here. So we're taking 1,500 of those folks and moving them out. Every state's getting a plus up. And I think when we do things like that, we inspire folks in America to become intel analysts and agents and say, we want to go work at the FBI because we want to go fight violent crime and we want to get sent out into the country to do it. And that's what we're doing in the next 3, 6, 9 months. We're going to do that hard. And, I didn't know that I was going to do this, but I'm going to announce it on your show anyway. This FBI is leaving the Hoover Building because this building is unsafe for our workforce, and we want the workforce.
You just gave up a big nugget
We
there.
want the American men and women to know, if you're going to come work at the premier law enforcement agency in the world, we're going to give you a building that's commensurate with that. And that's not this place.
Okay,
So,
I
Greg,
got two
is that a
questions.
big deal?
Yeah, number one, is that a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge deal. As I think I mentioned to Jeff earlier when we spoke, a third of the FBI manpower is located in the Washington D.C. area, and
you served in that bureau, right?
yeah, well, I worked at the Washington field office, which is separate from headquarters. They're not too far
see.
apart, but they're two different entities. Yeah.
Yeah, but that okay, sure.
Every agent that's at headquarters is a supervisor. They automatically get that that
Designation.
range when they transfer there. So you have this huge building full of nothing but supervisors, and they're supervising offices throughout the entire country. Well, if you want to supervise offices throughout the entire country, maybe you ought to be in the office that is doing the work and not be located in one small building in the middle of Washington, D.C. It doesn't make any sense. It's like an inverted pyramid.
Yes.
where you have more bosses than worker bees.
That's
And
like the U.S.
it makes no
military right
sense.
now, I think.
I'm sorry?
That's like the U.S. military right now with all the generals. So many
Right now.
generals, so many generals right now.
But it's not going to be that way apparently in the coming year.
I hope
There-
so.
There's another aspect to this that I find really interesting. And that is thematically, this move, should it go through, because everyone's going to fight everything, resist, this move represents or reflects a very federalist, a very different perspective on the relationship between agencies that are public facing, like the field offices, and Washington. Riddle me this, Greg, would people in, say, the Missouri field, I guess Kansas City field office, would they refer to these supervisors as Washington?
Oh, always. Headquarters.
Of course.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
It was everybody versus headquarters versus everybody.
Right. So you
And
have,
yet they're trying to get to headquarters.
well,
to
that's
chase
the
that
brass.
to chase that promotional path, yes.
That's what I'm
Sure.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of service, in terms of actually getting the job done, if I hear you, I'm 100% behind you, and that is, wait a minute, it makes sense that the supervisors, or at least a fair number of them, know the neighborhood that they're responsible for protecting. When a name comes up, they're like, oh, yeah, I met that guy at the Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, oh, I know those people, right? There has to be some connection. And that represents a larger, I think, fits in. This is perhaps Patel's, one of his geniuses. I think he's a genius, is decentralization.
Yes.
Right? I mean, this is a libertarian core principle, giving the power of right and wrong, yes and no, I want, I don't want, whatever, back to municipalities, back to communities, which means back to families, which means back to the citizens.
Well, what I want to say about that, slightly, it's similar because what you were saying, Greg, that this is where the majority of the employees are. And Kash Patel said we're going to send 1,500 agents out into the field. Mm-hmm. I used to work a number of years ago in a political office in the New York City area, and sometimes you'd have rain for 2 weeks and everybody be working, and you just get this stultified, dynamic there. And the thing was, get everybody out of the office, go out there, go to Congress, go to the Senate, go to the legislatures, get out on your feet, talk about ideas with people, do some work. To what you're saying, Charles, and also, Greg, you said this a little bit in another interview about this idea of being a cop, right? So, it used to be that policemen were peace officers. To what you're saying, Charles, they knew the neighborhood, right? They knew everybody. So the sense that I got, and I do want to get your take on this, Greg, first of all, is sending 1,500 FBI agents out in the field enough? Should we maybe be sending more than that? But then also we have this question of
funding for it, because that's the other thing that's going now is the Trump administration is talking about cutting back on the funding.
That's right. But they're talking about going after narcotics. They're talking about going after sex trafficking. He said the knock at the door is not going to be Amazon. It's going to be us. So tell me about some of this aspect of it, if you could.
Well, Ryan, the FBI, it's funny. They've sort of become the Walmart of law enforcement. They investigate. They're responsible for investigating over 200 different categories of crimes. I'm not talking about 200 crimes. I'm talking about categories of crimes. So they've been involved in everything from identity theft to copyright violations to, child pornography, and then, white collar crime and interstate theft, and, on and on and on. And I think it's become too much. You have DEA, and they have a very focused mission. They're narcotics trafficking and enforcement. ATF, I think is ATF and E now, right? Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives, I think. Again, their name indicates exactly what they do. Secret Service, sort of the same thing. But the FBI, it is far-ranging, and unfortunately, I think it gets diluted when they're trying to be everything to everybody. If you want.
Well, would it be possible? And again, I surely defer to your experience. It seems to me that when you have a specialized, let's call it jurisdiction, let's say DEA, right? And the FBI certainly has their hands in plenty of stuff that would normally be under the DEA umbrella, right? In a perfect world, or perhaps in Trump world, one's hoping, or whoever is president, in that situation, the FBI is not merely providing the technical support, the lab stuff, the maybe manpower, the technical stuff that DA needs. Does that make sense as a supplement?
Well,
the FBI
the thing is, they hate to be left out of anything, and that's become part of the problem. Any serial murder, we're involved. There's a bombing, we're involved. There's a kidnapping, we're involved. Violent bank robbery, we're involved. And there's only so much that can go around. Like I said, my fear is that they become the Walmart where, if you want something of high quality, your first thought is to say, I'll go to Walmart and get it. If you're looking for a beautiful set of golf clubs, you're not going to say, well, we'll go to Walmart. They'll have them there. Well, yeah, they'll have them there, but they're not going to have what you're looking for there. And my concern is that they only have, I think, 14,000 special agents across the country and 60 foreign offices. And there's way more work than they can be handled. So I think they have to focus, or refocus rather, on the violent crime, on the priority crimes, and maybe leave the fugitives to the marshals, leave the narcotics to DEA, leave the gun trafficking to ATF, and refocus on the things that matter.
Greg,
I should point out I got a very nice Mother's Day present at the Branford Walmart for my mother. So sometimes Walmart. It was
checking in with the FBI. Huh?
They have a nice garden, whatever you call the garden department. Hey, before we lose Greg, we got to hit one of the big controversies, and that's January 6th.
Yeah.
Now,
again, holding my breath.
President Trump lawfully authorized the deployment of National Guard, and me, as the head of the Office of Secretary of Defense, with the Secretary of Defense, took that action. When it finally came in, because it had to have the governor and mayor of D.C.'s approval on it, that's the way the law works. And once it finally came in on January 6th, remember, we offered to them days beforehand, and they rejected it. And we've put out the letters, and your show has done great coverage showing how it was rejected. We mobilized the fastest cold start in Washington, D.C. since World War II, and the largest occupation of D.C. by the National Guard since the American Revolution. That's what happened on January 6th. But what you and your viewers want to know, now that we've beat back that disinformation campaign with actual truth, is what was the FBI doing? Well, we got answers coming. We just found a trove of information, and it's on its way to Capitol Hill right now. And they've asked, and they're getting them, and you're getting answers on January 6th. You're getting answers on what sourcing was utilized, what money was utilized, how many assets were utilized, who made those decisions. You're getting it. We can only control the FBI, but you're getting it from the FBI.
Were there FBI agents undercover egging people on?
Like I said, that answer is coming. And it's on its way to Congress.
Ray
I want to level set
Epstein?
here. I want the American public to go back and look at what our predecessors stated to Congress under oath, that there were no FBI sources utilized in and around January 6th. I'm going to leave it at that, but go play the videotape and look for this material coming to Congress.
So
he wouldn't have said that they testified that there were no FBI sources utilized unless they found out there were FBI sources utilized.
Yeah. Well, I think Dan Bongino, at some point in the interview, had made a very good point where people are confusing agents with assets.
I was going to ask you.
But that aside, I also would like to ask the question, the January 6th committee, when they finished their investigation, why did they feel compelled to destroy all of their files and evidence? I would think that you would want to preserve it if you were so proud of the outcome and the thoroughness of the investigation. Yet somehow all that information apparently was destroyed.
Now, I heard Bongino make that point that they need to make a distinction between agents and assets.
Yes.
But right there, Patel used the word sources. So what's the difference between sources, agents, and assets?
And let me just throw in, everybody wants to know who was Ray Epps in that context.
Right. Well, so agents are going to be agents that wear the badge, that have gone through the training at Quantico. Those are, one of the 14,000 agents that are in the FBI. Assets, sometimes they'll call them informants, sometimes they'll call them sources, are going to be non-agents and usually non-FBI personnel that happen to be working sort of as a contract employee, for lack of a better word.
That in Crossfire Hurricane, and as you well know, and maybe you want to tell folks, we'll keep it brief, but maybe you want to explain to folks what it means to be a CI, in how that's an imprimatur, it's a stamp of approval, and you can be your CI.
Well, did he say what a source is yet, though?
Same. I mean, same asset, source, informant.
Oh,
I think they're all really interchangeable at this point. The FBI does not, well, I don't want to say frowns upon. They do not allow you to have, they used to call them pocket informants, the unofficial informants. If you have receiving information from someone, then they either have to be a criminal informant or a confidential source, one of the two, a CI or a CS.
Right. Well, it seems to me the big question is what were they doing? I mean, I would have actually been surprised if there was no FBI involvement at all. That would be a surprise. It's not so. How many of them and what were they doing, right?
Look, the CI designation, CI, is important because that's what the phony dossier was all. Steele was a CI, right? Approved, paid, and his credibility had been called into question.
Right.
In the FBI, in the DOJ, in this intelligence community for years. There was a lot of shady stuff and stuff that didn't check out, but he was of that approval, that stamp of approval. And I thought maybe Greg could talk about how a politicized agency gives or doesn't give that stamp of approval, because that changes the whole narrative and the whole stream of stories.
Let's face it.
That you get.
Whitey Bulger was a CI.
Who was?
Whitey Bulger up in Boston.
The criminal, the Boston thug. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Who was killed in Santa Monica, where I used to live, right?
Okay. Yeah. But these assets are usually people that are embedded with like the Proud Boys or any of these, groups that they're trying to monitor their activities. So they will, usually try to find someone that will agree to cooperate and become a source. Whitey Bulger was a CI because he was a criminal informant. Sources are usually at a lower level and don't get paid as much.
Steele was not a criminal. Steele was.
He was a British intelligence. Yeah. Well,
that's what we're going to see in Crossfire Hurricane. I promise you this. I've worked on so many stories about it, deep, and I highly recommend those of you really into it, check out the reporting of Jerry Dunleavy. He now works at Just the News, formerly the Washington Examiner, and he's really dug into this stuff. I mean, hours and hours of stuff. And when Crossfire Hurricane 1 gets accepted as a real thing by the majority of American people, because they still haven't, I mean, let's face it, there are a lot of people who have just, that old thing, whatever, it's anti-Biden, and they turn off. Two, once they do recognize that Crossfire Hurricane was a thing, perhaps one hopes they will open their eyes a little bit. The penny will drop, whatever your phrase you're looking for. And people will understand, wait a minute, the FBI was bloody weaponized. The DOJ was bloody weaponized. And I haven't seen, I don't know, I'm about the same age, maybe a little older. I haven't seen this sort of thing since Nixon, honestly. the stuff I've seen in the past 4 years meets the standard of you name a civil right and they violated it, and that, and this, I don't mean to rant.
Okay. Now, Greg, we're just a minute over the time. You're about to leave, but I want you to give me a kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down as a final thing. DNI Tulsi Gabbard said James 8647 Comey should be put behind bars after his recent thing. Yes or no?
Ryan, it's laughable that he's trying to distance himself from knowing what 86 would mean.
Okay.
He prosecuted organized crime cases.
All right.
And he finds things on the beach. This is the second.
But hold on a second. I don't want to keep our next guest waiting too long, but just real quickly, let's say that's the right interpretation. But what makes it a crime? I don't hear a threat in that. I thought it was perfect, although it's very unsavory. I'm not endorsing it, but I thought it was legal to say you're in favor of somebody doing some crime. That's all he said. At worst, it seems to me. What's the crime?
Well, I think it's a very gray area. I mean, Charles would probably have a better insight on this than I do. I think he's put his toe on that red line, but hasn't pushed it across the line.
That's a fair way to put it. And to be honest, if it wasn't Comey who said 86, then I don't think it would be. I don't think anybody in the right mind would bring charge. You see, remember? I'm in
favor of Ryan being slapped silly, but I don't think I just committed a crime by saying I'd love to see that.
No.
He just wants to be bald, Charles. Don't listen to that nonsense. Greg I look the
Greg,
best.
thanks for joining us. I feel like we barely skimmed the surface, so let's find
out. If you'd like to have me back, there's a couple of things I wish we could have gotten into, but that's fine.
Okay,
I appreciate the time.
We will.
Let's do that. This stuff is in the news. It's going to be new developments constantly. So if you'd be willing to come back, that would be great.
Certainly.
You can be reached on your webpage, right?
Yes.
Yep. thinblueliebook.com. There it is.
Thank you, guys.
Correctly and everything.
Thanks, Greg. We'll speak to you again soon.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Here we have Dr. Catherine Langdon and Ryan Langdon, a physician assistant, which is a term for a secretary for somebody who takes notes for doctors.
It's all within the family, I hear. Hello, the two of you.
How are you?
We've got a doggy. Who's the doggy?
Can you see him?
No, I can hear him though.
He's still barking.
No. It's maybe their microphone's a little on the loud side here. Let's see.
How's that?
That's great. It's not often we have two guests together on the same camera. What a power couple. I mean, all the health needs that could possibly need to be met are covered between you two.
I don't know about that, but we definitely have a wide spectrum of knowledge.
We do.
I wouldn't say a lot.
The connection between the previous issue and what we want to talk to you guys about is cover-up, or, is it a cover-up or is it not? Of course, the FBI and other government scoundrels have been less than forthcoming in so many ways.
About the Biden,
no. This is about flat Earth.
Oh, okay.
Not an expert on that.
Well,
just kidding. Well, he said wide base of knowledge. So, okay, no, I'm just teasing. Go ahead, Jeff.
Our beloved former President Joe Biden was recently diagnosed with prostate cancer, and largely because a lot of people don't trust him and trust the people that were surrounding him. There's a lot of suspicion immediately. Oh, maybe this was actually known for some period of time and they were covering it up. So I thought I'd have the medical experts come on to address that issue, and maybe we can all learn a little bit about how to look out for prostate cancer as well. But let's start with, is it unusual that he had such an advanced state of cancer discovered this late in the game, or do you smell a cover-up?
So it's not unusual. We'll start there. So typically, your PSA levels, which is your prostate-specific antigen levels, are tested annually starting at about age 50. And then they typically stop testing around age 69, 70, unless you have some really strong family history of prostate cancer or
Symptoms.
Yeah, or symptoms, or they were testing you and your PSA levels were elevated and continuing to elevate over time. So it's very possible that he had completely normal PSA levels and maybe not a strong family history. And so they were not screening him more than likely for the last, 12 years? He's 82.
Right. This is
so,
from the CDC here, actually, where they say men who are 70 or older and older should not be screened routinely. And basically, it's then you can request the test.
But
Right.
what's the should about what's involved in a PSA test that makes it so risky?
Yeah, so it's not, the test itself is not risky. So that's not the part that's risky. Blood test.
If you're standing on the toilet in bare feet and you just took a shower and you're going to try the test, that could be risky, but the test itself is not risky.
Yeah, no slip, no fall risk involved.
Totally,
Yeah, there's no risk with that. It's more so the fact that as you're aging, especially when you're over the age of 70, most men have elevated PSA levels because they have BPH, or there are a bunch of different things that can cause elevated levels. So they don't want men coming in with 1 point of data that says, oh, my PSA is elevated, now I need a biopsy, or I need this and that.
PET scan.
Right.
It overuses resources. It bogs down the healthcare system.
And more so, it can cause bigger issues for men when they're being biopsied or treated for things that they don't need to be treated for.
So you're feeling, if I can, Langdon folks, is that the guidelines are generally that we're talking about, the when to test, when not to test, you're okay with that? You think that's? I genuinely ask that. You don't see any.
Personally,
Well, one thing is, let's make a distinction between what's generally advised by the profession and whether or not they agree with the general.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
right. So, as a healthcare professional, I don't necessarily agree that we should just not test people
For cases like this, exactly.
Because this is exactly what happens. And I've had a lot of patients where this is what happened to them. So it's not great, but we as healthcare professionals in it, we're not the ones saying this is the guideline. We're following what CMS is coming out with, or the CDC is coming out with for guidelines.
I spoke with a doctor, and he basically said exactly the same thing that you did. We had him on the show before, Dr. James Schlotman. Jeff, you remember him. He said almost exactly what you're saying. The one question I have is, but he's the president of the United States.
Right.
Exactly.
And I don't mean to be a grammar Nazi, but I'm still hung up on that word should. Why don't they say, maybe it's not necessary or something, but that language implies there's some danger to it. It's weird.
Yeah, that's
The danger is having a long waiting list to go see your urologist when there's people that actually do have symptoms of cancer,
Right.
and then they have to wait 6 months because every single person
threatening
for this.
Yeah, that's one danger. But then, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm trying to interact here. They're not life-threatening risks. That's the point.
Yeah. Well, the testing is
The testing is
Economic and blah blah blah, societal.
Financial,
Blah, blah.
that's what I was thinking. It's
also prostate cancer is very
My
slow.
question, because Jeff really, I think, or Ryan, you guys pointed to, it's not just the president of the United States. Wouldn't you have the test every day? But let's put him in a category of people, CEOs, high net worth individuals who can certainly afford it, right? They're not going to be a drain on the public welfare. There are some people who have the capability of having tests, serious full tests, regularly. Don't you think the president of the United States falls into that category?
Right.
Good point.
But there is one thing about prostate cancer screening also. So let's say he was being tested for the last few years. Let's say he was getting annual testing. Part of the algorithm of deciding, do we need to biopsy the prostate? Do we need to treat this as prostate cancer? what do we need to do? You have your PSA levels checked. Let's say it is elevated or outside of the normal range. Because there's so many things that can cause that are benign. Typically, there's this watchful waiting period where they're going to retest you over and over and over for sometimes 3-5 years until it gets way out of the range. And that's when they're going to intervene. So at that point,
that point,
though, like for him, if he had this faster growing cancer, maybe they didn't catch it until it was too late because they had done that typical like waiting period.
The $64 question is, had they given him full-time, full-blown, top-level CEO care, would they have detected this is what everyone wants to know. Would they have detected what poor Joe Biden, I mean that seriously, I don't wish anything ill on anyone, but that said, would they have detected this cancer earlier?
Maybe not. I mean, honestly,
I think the issue is when it gets to the bones. I guess that's where it becomes dangerous. I think Scott Adams has the exact same thing, and I think he said he has like a year or less.
Anytime there's metastatic disease to the bone, they're gonna probably die within the next couple of months.
I actually have my annual physical scheduled.
I'm not asking about the prognosis. That's forward looking, and it's tragic. And you're right. Once it goes into the bone, I had a friend with multiple myelitis. You get it. I mean, I know. But I'm asking really the question that everyone is on, and it's a public interest question. Had they given him, Biden, full-blown testing, is it conceivable or reasonable to say they would have caught it? I don't know the answer. You're the medical guy.
Didn't she say maybe?
She said maybe.
Maybe not, because based on
he's going to keep asking the question until he gets the answer.
Hold on.
Well, I'm trying.
Classic.
No, I think Dr.
why.
Langdon, you answered it. I think you answered it.
Yeah, stop harassing her, Charles.
I'm not harassing it. Do you feel
No,
bad?
hold on a second. There is a different way that I've heard this question asked, if I may. And you as medical professionals might be able to answer this and just let it go where it goes here. People have also said, and some of them are medical people that I've spoken to, well, there was so much time spent looking at his mental breakdown. Jake Tapper just wrote a book about that. Well, hold on. That they were focusing on this and missed this. And that is also typical in medicine, where you can be looking at one thing, not a conspiracy. Yeah, tunnel vision. So tell me, Langdon, is that also possible in medicine, that you're looking at one thing and you're missing the other thing?
That's definitely possible. And prostate cancer specifically. So there are.
He's got different professionals for each of those. We're talking on.
Let me say something.
I don't know.
I have two things to say.
Let me first.
Go ahead,
Let
Langdon.
the Langdons talk. Come on.
So, I think that if you are the doctor for the President of the United States of America, you probably should not have blinders. You should be good enough to do a thorough enough exam and workup each year to know that they are on the right path to being healthy going into their job. That's very important. That being said, as she said, there's many reasons to have an elevated PSA. There's many reasons not to check a PSA. So that being said, they're just following the guidelines, and there's nothing that those doctors. That's just what they do. That's how we practice medicine. Is we find the literature, we go with the literature, and we make the best possible decisions that we can make based on evidence that we have.
And
What does your gut tell you?
You have really no symptoms until it is to the point where it's metastatic. And the type of prostate cancer he had was very aggressive. So based on what I saw today when I was just kind of looking at his Gleason score, it's a Gleason 9. So that's a very aggressive form of prostate cancer.
Exactly.
So it could have very well gone from 0 to 100 in 6 months.
Charles did say, what's your gut feeling now? Forget doctor, what's your gut feeling?
You're under oath.
If this was my gut feeling on whether or not this was a cover up.
Yes.
No, whether or not it was detectable, and should they have? What's your gut say?
Again, I don't know that I can give a straight answer.
Well, okay. How about this? How about this?
I'll let
Somerville
Ryan.
John says you got a problem where you can't pee.
Yeah, he also said we need to talk to urologists. But I don't know.
Same.
Did I fail to say at the beginning that Catherine is a pelvic health specialist? This is one of your specialties, right?
Yes, this is what I
She
do
treats
every
this.
single day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
pipe down, John. Maybe it's my
Somerville
fault for not
John,
saying it.
just hold on there.
Yeah.
Let me speak
Calm
to
yourself,
you
Somerville
can't
John.
pee, that's BS. Number one, every man over the age of 80 can't pee. Or they have a reduced stream. They take
Oh,
medicine.
great.
They take
Charles,
finasteride.
that means in 6 more months. That's what you have to look for.
Yeah, I have so much to live for. I can have another
So
Marlboro.
you got to save all the coffee straws. Just save them all from when you get your coffee down in the corner.
Also, there's other factors that come into this, such as being a man, and men do not like to speak up about their problems. There's no one watching him pee, and he can very well just not care or not tell anyone because he's embarrassed. That's also a factor.
If he is having cognitive decline, right? I mean, he's probably not recognizing if something is changing. But to Ryan's
He
point,
doesn't know if he's peeing or pooping because he's lost his mind.
but to Ryan's point and Somerville John's point, yes, as you age, your urinary stream weakens, but that can be for a million different reasons. And typically, I mean, your prostate is enlarging as you age, which squeezes on your urethra and doesn't allow you to empty your bladder well. So whether or
Ouch.
not you have cancer, you're probably going to have a weakened urinary
Yeah.
stream, and that's normal.
I was being facetious when I say every man, but it's a very, very common thing
So
as you
common.
age.
Look at Charles, by the way, is smoking a cigarette. Would you
No.
endorse that, or what would be your official?
In your honor, Langdon.
I just want
Hey,
you to know,
I'm-
in the 1950s, they
to look
smoked
forward to.
in doctors' offices.
I have a physical exam actually scheduled, I think, next week. So my question is, should I ask for a PSA test, and will I get grief like it's some sort of exotic, unusual request?
How old are you?
Yeah.
Well, I don't. A gentleman's got to keep some secrets, but in the name of medicine, I'll say 65.
Yeah, they should
You
test
should be
you.
tested
Yeah.
every year. Yeah.
55 to
But I won't get-
69.
I won't get
No,
resistance like it's a special request that the insurance
No,
won't cover.
They'll do it in a heartbeat, but they'll go, why? Why do you want to be tested?
They will ask you if you're
Are you
having
having
symptoms.
because the Langdons told me to. That's my answer.
And the president.
You know, like,
Langdon's.
who-
Is there any value in getting a script for one of these at home tests? What's your view on you see them advertised all the time, poo in a box.
That's
and
a pregnancy test, Charles. It's different.
Yeah, the
Are those-
colorectal ones are good if you don't want to go to the doctor. They're not necessarily the best, and if you're on certain medications or if you have other issues going on, they're not accurate. But a lot of people will do that just because they can do it from the comfort of their own home. So I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
They advertise quite heavily, as you know. I mean, it's probably a very good business.
Welcome to America.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on big pharma. That's a whole other show, and you'll be on it, I'm sure.
Don't get me started on big insurance. So
Yeah. They're
I got
kind of the
to do that.
same in a way,
Yeah, they
I
are.
feel like.
They are. There's a whole. There's so much
They're
material.
in bed together, and it's a very
Well,
small bed.
this kind of
They
leads
might be the same beast.
this conversation is kind of relevant because these tests that are done are basically guidelines that insurance
Insurance
holds
companies
you
made
to.
up. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, actually. Yeah.
So if you're getting a PSA over the age of 70 with a last known normal PSA, insurance is gonna
Deny.
have some red flags, deny
Yes.
you, give you some trouble.
Yeah, that's
So-
why I asked the question.
You jump through hoops. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's. And you, Langdon, you pointed out something that it just touched my heart. There is in our society this boys club thing about mental health and physical health. Real men don't talk about, and in the executive suite, too often people get shipped out to the land of broken toys.
Yeah.
It's a real, because no one wants to talk about it. We, at Yale, we would never say that sort of thing. That's a bad thing.
The thing is, I'm kind of surprised that's still a problem.
Crisis. That's all. I leave that to you. Right?
Well, I work in the South here, and there's some country folk. And if you see a man that works on a farm come into the emergency department, you know that they're about to crash. So because they'll finish the job before they come in.
Yeah, walk it off.
I'll go to the doctor if I have a mosquito bite. But
Walk it off, kid.
I know. But Jeff, you're
All right,
such a wuss.
I love that these guys were calling you Langdons and that you put power couple under it. So before you go, you seem like you may be willing to flirt with controversy a little bit with your comment about the insurance industry. So let me ask you, if you don't mind, what's your take on the cognitive decline of Biden controversy? Was it obvious?
I don't know what the controversy is, but I mean, he obviously has
It's
cognitive decline.
clear and evident
So
to
obvious.
any person. People that were trying to say that he has a speech impediment needs to
Anyone who's
get better PR.
anyone who's ever worked with anyone in healthcare who has ever seen a patient with some form of dementia or cognitive decline, like you see him
can see
speak, and it is to a T that. So.
Right. Charles is
And it's
just
been a
rushed
while.
up to get a PSA test, I think.
Yeah. No, I just removed him just so we weren't distracted. So,
All right,
righty.
Langdons, thanks a lot for joining us.
thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Of course.
And,
course.
You have a
Anytime.
great
I'll see
name,
you.
Ryan.
Thank you. Right back at you, Ryan.
But
Did
how's
you-
your
I don't know if
hair? Because this is masculine hair. Nope, not gonna do it. Not.
Couldn't be better. It's turning gray, but it's still there.
I don't know if you heard any of our previous guests, but he used to be a cop in Branford, Connecticut, and I
That's
met
where my
him.
parents
Gosh.
live.
That's what I'm pointing
Safe
out.
place to be a cop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I met him when I was there for Mother's Day at a book fair in Branford.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
At a Walmart, which is what the FBI is today.
Was he following you?
He was sitting at a table on a sidewalk. It was a book fair. All right, Langdons, love you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks
you
for
very
having us
much.
anytime.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
All righty. Take care, guys.
Langdons.
Well, let's see. Charles, let's see if Charles is back. Charles is back.
Did you run off to get a PSA test, Charles?
So you muted my mic.
No, you should be there. We can hear you loud and clear. Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
One of the LED light boxes ran out of juice. It's all learning experience.
All right.
Bring back my boyfriend with the cigarette. There he is.
Jeff, you need to get that old fashioned. You remember the Indian's head that they would throw up for technical difficulty?
No, I
don't
don't.
know.
But
I've
I know
seen
what
that.
you mean. Sort of.
It's just do your Google images Indian head television test. And there's a
Okay.
test pattern. And when there were technical difficulties, like the host got drunk and grabbed somebody's boob or something. What were technical difficulties? Remember live TV?
I will work on that.
It's the pattern. It's called it's a pattern, right? The Indian
It's a
head.
test pattern, yeah.
Yeah. I found it.
And the
Wow.
Indian's head was very,
Back
very
in the era of when we got TV.
RCA. That was RCA. Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
All right.
some
Well,
of the-
thanks to our guests, the Langdons, Catherine and Ryan, and also thanks to Greg Dillon and to my beautiful co-hosts, Charles Glasser and Ryan.
Oh,
Milton.
thank you so much.
Thanks
Sorry
to our
about the
No problem. Thanks to our beloved audience. We'll be back next Thursday, as usual, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, baby.
Till then, take care, everybody, and enjoy your wine.
Good night.